Every house, every king, and every battle has its own truth. But there are stories older than crowns, darker than the night, and more dangerous than any blade. They were never written in books. They were whispered to fire, to the trees, and to the dead gods. And today, we dare to uncover one of them. The wind that swept across the shivering sea carried with it a bitter cold, sharp as a blade, and smelling faintly of salt and ash. North of the wall, snow fell in great lazy flakes, glimmering faintly in the pale light of dawn. Far to the south, in the ruins of King's Landing, the same dawn rose weak and red through drifting smoke. The fires of the Dragon Queen had burned out long ago, yet their memory lingered like a scar across the world. Men told tales still, of the silver-haired queen who had freed slaves and burned cities, of her dragons that had blotted out the sun. But now only one beast had been seen since her fall, and even that in whispers. Sailors in Bravos spoke of a creature that flew at dusk, a dragon pale as frost, its wings shimmering with the hues of twilight. They called it the Twilight Dragon, and said it came from the west, over the waves, from a land of ghosts and old kings. In the frost fangs, beyond the wall, a man walked alone beneath the pale sky. His hair was dark, streaked with the silver of snow, his cloak thick and black, trimmed with white fur. Ghost padded beside him, red eyes gleaming in the dimness. Jon Snow, once Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, once the bastard of Winterfell, once a king in all but name, was now only a man without a home. He had thought the wall would be his ending, that exile was his penance. Yet even here, at the edge of the world, peace did not come. There were rumors from the south, carried by traders and wildlings alike. Strange lights over the sea, roars like thunder rolling over Skagos, an island half forgotten and feared. Tormund Giantsbane had laughed when he first told him the tale, but his laughter had faded when the night came, and the skies glowed faintly red. "There's old things on that island," Tormund had muttered, spitting into the snow. "Things that make even the crows uneasy. Might be the gods left something there they meant us never to find." Jon had not meant to care. He told himself such tales were for fools. Yet one night, as Ghost lifted his head and howled toward the eastern sky, Jon saw it too, a streak of pale light cutting across the darkness, and for a heartbeat, the shadow of wings. He tried to forget it, but when sleep came, it brought dreams of fire and snow, of a girl with silver hair weeping beside a blackened throne, of dragons crying in the distance. When he woke, the scent of ash clung to his cloak, and so, at last, he set out again, southward, toward the wall, toward the rumors that would not die. He told no one but Ghost. He rode through days of biting wind and nights of frozen silence until the looming ice of the wall rose before him once more. At Eastwatch, he found the watch changed but still standing. Men he once commanded greeted him with uneasy respect. The new Lord Commander, Sir Dennis Mallister's nephew, a stern man with eyes like ice, listened to Jon's words and frowned. "A dragon?" he said. The Queen's beasts were all accounted for. One slain, one vanished, and the other burned with her corpse. "Then what do the sailors see?" Jon asked quietly. "Something flies above Skagos. I mean to find out what." The commander shook his head. "You'll find death, Snow. That's all Skagos holds." Jon only nodded. "Death follows me wherever I go, but I must know if this is her legacy, or something worse." By the week's end, he had gathered a small company. Rolf, the spearwife, who claimed she had kin on Skagos, Cotterpike's old shipmate Mern, and two of the free folk who owed Jon their lives. They sailed aboard a weathered galley across the gray waters, the sea restless beneath them, the wind whispering of old doom. For 3 days they saw nothing but fog and the black peaks of distant cliffs. Then, on the 4th night, as the sun sank into the west, Mern cried out. "Look!" he shouted, pointing to the horizon. Out of the clouds came a sound like a storm's heart breaking, a deep, throbbing roar that set the timbers trembling. Then, through the twilight, they saw it, vast wings gleaming with hues of silver and violet, scales shining like the last light of dusk. The creature turned its long neck toward them, eyes burning pale blue in the fading sun. And then, just as swiftly, it vanished into the clouds, leaving only silence and the beating of their hearts. Rolf whispered, "Seven save us." Jon stood at the prow, the wind tugging at his cloak. His breath hung white before him, but his voice was steady. "We follow it." That night, they reached the jagged coast of Skagos. The island loomed high and dark, its mountains draped in mist, its shores littered with black stones and bones of whales. Fires flickered faintly in the distance, where the Skagosi clans made their homes. Jon had been warned of them. Half-wild men, rumored to eat the flesh of their enemies, loyal to no crown. But as the boat ground against the stones and Ghost leapt ashore, Jon felt a strange pull in his chest, as if the island itself called to him. When they made camp that night, the sea roared and the wind wailed through the cliffs. Far above, lightning flashed, and for an instant, against the storm-lit clouds, Jon saw the dragon once more, coiling like a serpent of dusk. And from the mountains, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of a child's cry. Jon rose, his sword at his side, and Ghost's fur bristled in the dark. The wind carried a whisper through the night. "Blood of the dragon." Jon froze. The voice was soft, familiar, and gone as swiftly as it came. He turned toward the mountains, his heart pounding. Somewhere out there, beneath the shadow of the Twilight dragon, something waited. Something that should have died with Daenerys Targaryen. The journey had begun. The storm had broken by dawn. The skies above Skagos cleared to a cold, hard blue, and the sea lay restless and gray beneath the cliffs. Jon Snow stood on the stony shore, cloak heavy with salt and rain. Behind him, their small camp still smoked from the night's fire. The others were stirring, Rolf sharpening her axe, Mern muttering curses over the waterlogged stores. But Jon's eyes were fixed on the mountains that rose inland, white peaks hidden behind the mist. Ghost prowled the edge of the camp, his white fur shining against the black stones. Every so often he stopped, ears twitching toward the heights, and gave a low, uneasy growl. "There's something up there," Rolf said, following his gaze. "The Skagosi say their gods live in the peaks, beasts with scales and wings. Might be they were right." Jon's hand brushed the pommel of Longclaw, or it's men with torches and too many stories. Rolf's eyes gleamed with challenge. "You've seen it yourself, Crow. No torch burns like that thing." He said nothing. In truth, the memory of the dragon's shadow still haunted him. It had been no trick of light. What he had seen was real. The question that gnawed at him was whose creature it was, and why it had come to this forsaken place. By midday, they began the climb inland. The paths were little more than goat trails, winding between black boulders and frozen streams. Above them, the cliffs rose sheer and cruel, carved by centuries of wind. The island seemed empty of life, save for the distant cries of seabirds and the endless hiss of the sea. As the sun dipped lower, they came upon a cluster of huts built from driftwood and whalebone. Smoke rose thinly from their chimneys, A group of Skagosi watched from a distance, faces hidden beneath fur hoods, spears in hand. Rolf raised a hand in greeting, calling out in the rough northern tongue. After a tense silence, one of the islanders stepped forward, an old man with a beard like gray moss and eyes the color of stone. He studied Jon for a long moment. "You are not traitors," he said in the common tongue, thick with accent. "What do you seek in this cursed place?" "Shelter for the night," Jon replied, his tone even. "And news. There are tales of a beast seen in your skies." The man's gaze flickered toward the mountains. "Aye," he said softly. "The sky shadow. It comes at dusk, takes the goats, sometimes men. The old ones say it is a sign, the end of the quiet years." "What end?" Rolf asked. The man made a gesture against evil. "When dragons fly again, blood follows, always blood." That night, they shared the villagers' fire. The Skagosi spoke little, but Jon listened. They told of strange lights over the peaks, of a child's voice heard in the storm, calling names no one knew. One hunter swore he had seen a figure riding the dragon, a shadow, no more than a shape against the lightning. When the villagers slept, Jon rose and stepped outside. The air was cold and sharp, filled with the scent of the sea. The stars burned bright above, but one by one they dimmed as a pale mist gathered over the mountains. Ghost pressed close beside him, fur bristling. Then, faintly, came that sound again, the cry of a child, distant but clear. Jon's breath caught. He turned toward it, every sense alive. The sound came from beyond the village, deeper in the hills. He followed, moving silently between rocks slick with frost. The path wound upward, through dark firs and jagged stone. The cry came again, closer this time, and with it a flicker of pale light. Jon crept to the edge of a ridge and froze. Below him lay a hollow in the rock, lit by a fire that burned blue. Around it stood a circle of stones, etched with strange, twisting marks, runes of Valyria, though faded and half-buried by time. At the center of the circle knelt a figure, a child. The boy was no older than 10, his hair pale as moonlight, his eyes a shade of violet Jon had seen only once before, in Daenerys Targaryen. The child's hands were clasped around a shard of crystal that glowed faintly in the firelight. He whispered words too soft to catch, but the air trembled with their power. Ghost growled low, and the boy's head snapped up. For a moment their eyes met, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Then came the roar. The mountains themselves seemed to shake as the sound tore through the night. Jon turned upward, just as the sky split open, vast wings unfurling against the stars, scales shimmering with hues of silver and blue. The dragon swept down, the wind of its passing knocking Jon to one knee. It landed beside the child, claws sinking into the earth. Steam rose from its nostrils. The boy reached out and touched its muzzle, and the beast bowed its great head, as gentle as a hound to its master. Jon's heart thundered. He had seen dragons before, but this one was unlike any of Daenerys's children. Its color was neither black, nor gold, nor green, but the shifting shade of Twilight itself, alive, otherworldly. He stepped from the shadows. "Boy," he called, his voice rough. "Who are you?" The child turned, eyes wide but unafraid. "You shouldn't be here. I could say the same to you." Jon's hand hovered near Longclaw's hilt. "Is that creature yours?" The boy hesitated. "He is. Mine, and not mine. He remembers things I do not. He called me from the dark." Jon took a slow step forward. "What's your name?" The boy's gaze flickered to the dragon. "Aelor," he whispered. "Aelor Stormborn." The name struck Jon like a blow. Stormborn. His thoughts tumbled. Impossible, it had to be. Yet the boy's eyes, that silver hair. Before he could speak again, The dragon stirred, its gaze fixed on John, unblinking, ancient. John felt its will press against his mind, curious, searching, and then darkly knowing. "Go," the boy said suddenly. "He doesn't trust you." "I don't blame him," John murmured. The dragon's throat rumbled and heat washed over him. Ghost bared his teeth, but John raised a hand. "I mean no harm. I came to learn what this thing is." The boy's eyes softened, almost sad. "It's what's left," he said, "of her." And then the dragon rose, wings spreading wide. In a rush of wind and firelight, it took to the sky, carrying the boy in its claws. John stumbled back as the air cracked with its passing, the blue flame of its breath lighting the peaks. When silence returned, the circle of runes still glowed faintly. In their light, John saw something half buried in the snow, a chain of silver, and a small disc bearing the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. He picked it up slowly, the metal warm against his palm. The boy was gone, the dragon with him. But somewhere high above the storm, the roar came again, long and mournful, echoing over the island like a promise and a curse. John stood alone in the dark, the token clenched in his fist, and knew this was only the beginning. Dawn came gray and cold over Skagos. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed and still. Jon Snow climbed down from the ridge where the dragon's roar still echoed in his bones. The runes in the hollow had gone dark, the strange blue fire nothing but frost now, but the token he carried, the silver disc of the three-headed dragon, seemed to pulse faintly with warmth. He tucked it beneath his furs, where it lay against his heart like a live thing. When he returned to the village, the Skagosi were stirring uneasily. Word had spread fast. The sky shadow had flown in the night, and some claimed to have seen its fire across the peaks. Old women muttered prayers to the drowned god, though Skagos had never been a place for sailors' faiths. Others simply watched the mountains in silence. Rolf met him by the fires, her face hard. "You were gone till dawn. What did you see?" John hesitated. How could he tell her? That a dragon still lived? No, something more than a dragon, something that should not be. And that it bowed to a boy who bore the Targaryen name? He only said, "I found signs of Valyrian craft, old and dangerous." Rolf spat into the fire. "Then we'd best be gone. There's no good in old Valyria. Not for men like us." But John's gaze drifted to the peaks, where clouds hung like banners. "We can't leave, not yet." That day they gathered what supplies they could, though the villagers gave little willingly. As the wind rose, John climbed alone once more, Ghost at his side, following the faint trail the dragon had left upon the snow, burned patches where its fire had scorched the ice to glass. He found the boy again that evening, in a narrow pass where the cliffs rose high on either side. Aelor stood beside a pool of frozen water, staring into it as though it were a mirror. The dragon lay beyond him, wings folded like sails at rest, its eyes half-lidded and gleaming pale in the dying light. "You followed," the boy said without turning. John approached slowly. "You didn't give me much choice." A faint smile touched the boy's lips. Few people would dare follow a dragon. "I've known worse than fire," John replied. The boy's reflection wavered in the ice. "You were in her dreams," he murmured. "The woman who burned, the mother of dragons. She saw you." John felt the air tighten around him. "Daenerys?" Aelor nodded. "Her fire lives on. He told me so." He gestured toward the dragon, who stirred, smoke rising from its nostrils. "He remembers her. He remembers everything." John studied the creature, the long, lean body, the shifting light of its scales, the scars that marked its wings. Is it hers? Aelor's eyes were strange, ancient, sorrowful. No, older, from before her time, before even Aegon the Conqueror. He was born of the doom when fire swallowed Valyria. They called him Zaldriza's Veziphon, the Twilight Flame. Jon frowned. That was centuries ago. No creature lives so long. Some do, the boy whispered. Some never die. They only sleep, waiting for the blood that wakes them. He touched his chest, and Jon saw the faint shimmer of scales beneath the boy's skin, so faint they vanished as quickly as they appeared. What are you? Jon asked quietly. The boy turned then, his expression weary and old beyond his years. A memory, he said, a song the blood remembers. Before Jon could press further, the ground trembled. The dragon rose suddenly, wings snapping open, a hiss like thunder escaping its throat. Aelor's head jerked toward the valley below. They're coming, he said. Jon spun, hand on Longclaw. Through the blowing snow he saw torches, 6 at least, winding up the path. Who? He demanded. Men who serve the black ships, the boy said, voice sharp with fear. They hunt him. They've been hunting since he woke. The torches drew closer, and Jon saw armored figures, sellswords by their bearing, and hard men at that. Their leader wore a breastplate blackened by salt and smoke, bearing a sigil he recognized only from whispers, the red kraken of the Iron Islands. Euron's men, Jon muttered. They've come far. The leader raised his voice, echoing through the pass. Boy, come forth. By order of Lord Arain Waters and the Fleet of the Dawn, you are claimed in the name of the Iron Throne. Jon's stomach turned cold. The Iron Throne, still, it reached even here. Aelor looked at him. If they take him, they'll use his fire to make more. The world will burn again. Jon gritted his teeth. Then we'll see they don't. The dragon shifted behind them, a growl deep as the sea rising from its chest. The sellswords hesitated, but their leader barked orders, and a volley of crossbow bolts hissed through the air. Most shattered harmlessly against the rocks, but one struck the beast's flank. The Twilight dragon roared, and fire exploded from its jaws, white fire, hot enough to melt stone. The air itself screamed. The front line of men vanished in flame. Those who survived fell back, screaming, shields glowing red with heat. Jon seized the boy's arm. Come on! They ran up the slope, Ghost at their heels. The dragon rose in a storm of wings, stones tumbling from the cliffs as it launched skyward. The wind nearly knocked Jon from his feet. He saw Aelor raise a hand, lips moving in a strange tongue, and the beast wheeled overhead, circling them like a guardian of the old gods. Below, the survivors fled in panic. The dragon's fire rained upon the path, sealing it with molten rock. When silence finally fell, the boy sagged to his knees, trembling. Jon knelt beside him. They'll send more, Jon said. If they think you're worth gold or power, they'll never stop. I know, Aelor whispered, but I can't leave. There's something here, something buried beneath the mountain. He dreams of it, calls to it. Jon looked up at the towering peaks. What lies beneath? The boy met his eyes, and Jon saw the fear there. A tomb, he said, of fire and blood, the last secret of Valyria. The wind howled around them, carrying the scent of smoke and ash. The dragon's shadow passed overhead once more, vast and silent. Jon's hand closed around the silver token at his neck. He could feel its warmth pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He thought of Daenerys, of her burning city, of her whisper, "Break the wheel." And he wondered if this child, this dragon, this cursed island Were the wheels turning once more? The boy rose, his eyes distant. "The dragon remembers you," he said softly. "You carry her grief." Jon had no answer for that. He looked toward the horizon, where the sea met the pale edge of the sky, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of prophecy pressing on his shoulders. The world had not forgotten its dragons. It had only been waiting for twilight. The next morning dawned hard and hollow, the kind of gray that promised another storm before nightfall. The sea wind bit through even Jon's thick furs as he and Aelor began their climb toward the mountain's heart. Behind them, Ghost loped silently through the snow, his white coat near invisible against the drifts. They followed a narrow trail worn into the rock, winding higher and higher until the world below was nothing but mist and ice. The dragon, the Twilight Flame, the boy had named it, flew above them in wide, slow circles, its shadow sweeping the cliffs like a living cloud. Jon had seen battlefields burn, had seen the dead rise in the snows beyond the wall, but there was something about this place that made even those horrors seem small. The air itself hummed faintly, as though alive with some old power, restless and waiting. Aelor walked ahead, light-footed and silent for one so young. His silver hair caught the pale light, and every so often he would pause, head tilted, as though listening to some far-off voice only he could hear. "What are you listening for?" Jon asked once. The boy hesitated before answering. "Dreams," he said softly. "He dreams in my mind. He shows me things, flashes of cities made of stone and fire, towers that fell, rivers of molten gold. He says it's where he was born." "Valyria," Jon murmured. Aelor nodded. "He says the doom never truly ended. It sleeps, like he did, waiting for blood to wake it." Jon said nothing more. The snow crunched under their boots, and the wind moaned between the stones. By midday, they reached a narrow plateau overlooking a deep ravine. From its depths came a low sound, almost like a heartbeat, slow and steady. The air smelled of brimstone and old smoke. Steam rose from cracks in the earth. Aelor knelt at the edge, peering into the gloom. "It's here," he whispered. "The tomb." Jon joined him, gripping a jut of rock for balance. Far below, the ravine opened into a vast cavern, its walls faintly aglow with red light. Something moved down there, something enormous, though half buried in stone. At first, Jon thought it a mountain of rock, but as his eyes adjusted, he saw the shape of wings, the curve of a skull large as a hall, and scales blackened by centuries. The remains of another dragon, dead but not decayed. He drew a slow breath. "Seven, save us." Aelor's voice trembled. He called it his brother, Vesophon Nike Adruta, the one who sleeps. Then we're standing over the grave of another monster. "No," the boy said, "not a monster, a key." Before Jon could question him, the Twilight Flame descended from the clouds, its wings beating storms into being. It landed on the far side of the ravine, its claws shattering stone. For a moment it stood still, gazing down at the corpse below, and then it loosed a cry so deep it seemed to shake the bones of the world. The mountain answered. Cracks raced through the rock beneath Jon's feet. Steam burst from the fissures, and the ground began to tremble. Ghost snarled, backing away from the edge. "Run!" Jon shouted. He seized Aelor's arm and pulled him back as the ledge gave way. They tumbled onto firmer ground, snow and stone cascading into the chasm below. When the rumbling ceased, a new sound rose, a hiss, like air escaping from the lungs of a dying god. From within the cavern, the blackened dragon's eyes opened, glowing faintly red. Aelor's face was white as bone. "He's waking." Jon drew Longclaw, though what good a sword could do against 2 dragons, he did not know. "Then we've done what men always do," he said grimly. "We've woken what should have been left sleeping." The twilight flame spread its wings and screamed, a sound of grief and fury intertwined. Across the sky, lightning split the clouds, casting both dragons in stark relief, one of twilight fire, the other of molten night. Aelor fell to his knees, clutching his head. "They're speaking," he gasped, "in the old tongue. They remember Valeria's fall." "What are they saying?" The boy's voice broke. "That the fire will rise again, that men's wars mean nothing, that the doom will walk the earth once more." Jon's stomach turned cold. "Then we stop it." "How?" Aelor looked up, eyes filled with both fear and faith. "They are fire itself." Jon looked to the boy, to the faint shimmer of scales beneath his skin, to the mark of blood and prophecy bound within him. Maybe fire can end fire. Before either could move, a horn sounded far below, the harsh, brazen call of men. Through the veil of snow, Jon glimpsed figures advancing along the lower cliffs. Ships had landed on the eastern shore. More of the Ironborn, perhaps, or worse. "They've followed us," Jon said. Aelor shook his head. "Not them. Different banners." Jon strained to see. The wind carried a faint flash of color, dark gray and white. Wolves. His heart stopped. The north. And then he saw her, small as a shadow at this distance, but unmistakable. The lithe figure moving with silent grace, her hair bound in a braid of dark gold. Arya. For the first time in years, Jon felt something fierce and human rise in his chest. Hope, sharp as pain. But the moment shattered as the mountain roared again. The black dragon's vast wings tore free of the stone, scattering ash and flame. The twilight flame rose to meet it, the air between them blazing. The 2 dragons circled, their cries echoing off the cliffs like war horns of gods. The mountain trembled, avalanches spilling down its slopes. Jon grabbed the boy. "We have to reach the others before they're crushed." They fled down a narrow pass, stones tumbling around them. Ghost darted ahead, leading them toward the lower ridge. Behind them, the dragons collided, fire against fire, night against twilight. The sky turned red as blood. When they finally reached the valley floor, Arya was waiting. She wore leathers and a heavy cloak, a thin sword at her side that gleamed like moonlight. She looked older, harder, yet her eyes were the same. "Jon," she said, half breath, half disbelief. He took one step toward her, and the years between them vanished. "Arya." They embraced, brief and fierce, as if to make sure the other was real. When they parted, she looked past him to Aelor and the burning sky. "That's what I followed here," she said. "The sailors in Braavos spoke of it. I didn't believe until I saw it myself." "Believe it now," Jon said. "There's more than one, and they're waking something far worse." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Then we stop it." Aelor stepped forward, his voice quiet but steady. "You can't stop what was bound before your grandfathers were born. You can only choose how it ends." The dragons screamed again, and the mountains answered with thunder. Jon looked to his sister, then to the boy who bore a dead queen's blood, and to the beasts of fire above. Somewhere in his soul, the cold truth settled. The Game of Thrones had ended once in fire and madness, but here, on this forsaken island, it was beginning again, in twilight, with dragons reborn. And this time, there would be no crown to win, only a world to save or to burn. The air smelled of fire and old death. Above the frozen peaks, the 2 dragons battled in a storm of smoke and flame. Their roars shook the island to its bones, scattering birds and beasts. and every man who lived on Skagos felt the tremor of their fury. The sky itself had turned red, as if the sun bled. Jon Snow stood with Arya on the valley floor, the boy Aelor between them, and watched the heavens burn. Ghost snarled at the thunder of wings. The heat rolling down from the mountain was enough to melt the snow where they stood. Aelor's face was pale and drawn, his eyes glazed as if he saw something far beyond the mortal world. "They're not fighting," he murmured. "They're remembering." "Looks like killing to me," Arya said grimly, her hand on the hilt of needle. Jon's gaze never left the sky. "What are they remembering?" "The doom," the boy whispered. "The fire that ended everything." The words sent a chill through Jon that no heat could melt. He looked to the mountains, where rivers of molten rock were beginning to spill down the slopes. The island groaned as though the old fires beneath it had woken again. Arya turned to him. "We can't stay here. The sea's the only way off this rock." Jon nodded. "We'll head east. There's a cove beyond the ridge where our ship waits." But Aelor shook his head. "The sea won't save us. He says it's coming from below, not above. The fire sleeps in the roots of the island." "Then we move faster," Arya said, already striding ahead. "Talk later." They fled across the valley, the sound of the dragon's battle rolling after them like the pounding of war drums. Snow and ash fell together from the sky. Behind them, the mountains split open, and the light pouring from its heart turned the world white. By the time they reached the eastern cliffs, the sea was a boiling gray expanse. The waves crashed against black rocks, and Jon could smell the salt and sulfur on the wind. Their ship, the Morning Star, still waited in the cove, her mast cracked but standing. Rolf and the others were aboard, wide-eyed as they watched the fire in the mountains. "What in the seven hells is happening?" Rolf shouted as Jon reached the shore. "The doom of Valyria," Jon said grimly, waking again. Arya was already climbing the rope ladder, quick as a cat, while Ghost leapt from rock to deck with ease. But when Jon turned to help Aelor, the boy hesitated at the water's edge. "They can't leave," he said softly. "They're bound to me. If I go, they'll follow. And if they follow, they'll burn everything in their path." Jon grabbed his shoulder. "You're a boy, not a god. You don't choose the fates of dragons." Aelor's eyes met his, strange and sad. "No, but they choose mine." A scream split the air then, a sound of pure agony. Both men looked up to see the Twilight dragon falter, its wings torn and smoking. The black dragon had struck it through the chest with claws like scythes. Fire spilled from the wound, raining embers across the sea. "No!" the boy cried. He tore free of Jon's grasp and ran into the surf. The water hissed and boiled around his feet, yet he did not stop. Jon waded after him, the heat searing his skin. "Get back!" Arya shouted from the deck. "Jon!" But Jon could not. Aelor was walking into the sea, his hair a halo of silver fire, his eyes alight. Above them, the Twilight dragon fell, striking the waves with a sound like thunder. The black dragon descended after, its great wings churning the air, and the sea rose in walls of steam. Jon threw an arm across his face, blinded. When he looked again, Aelor was gone. Only the boiling water remained, glowing faintly from beneath. Then the light spread. The sea itself began to burn. White fire surged upward in a column that reached the clouds. The ships rocked wildly, men crying out in fear. The black dragon shrieked, caught in the blaze, and tried to rise, but the fire clung to it, devouring it from within. The twilight flame burst from the depths, its wings of silver and violet whole again, its cry fierce and terrible. In its talons, it bore the boy, alive and wreathed in flame that did not harm him. Jon stumbled backward, awe and dread warring in his heart. Aelor's voice carried over the roar of the wind. "He's gone. I've bound him. But the fire won't sleep again." "What does that mean?" Arya shouted. "It means," Jon said, "the world just changed." The dragon rose higher, circling the burning sea, its light painting the clouds. Then, without warning, it turned north, toward the lands beyond the wall. "Aelor!" Jon called, but the boy only looked down, his expression calm, almost resigned. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them dragons are not gone. Tell them the night remembers." And then he was gone, a streak of twilight flame vanishing into the northern sky. The storm that followed was unlike any Jon had ever known. Waves rose higher than the masts, and lightning danced in the clouds like living fire. For 2 days they fought the sea, and when at last it calmed, Skagos was little more than smoke on the horizon. Arya stood beside him at the prow, her hair whipping in the wind. "Do you think he lived?" she asked. Jon looked toward the north, where faint lights flickered beyond the mist. "If he's truly Targaryen blood, then fire won't kill him." "And what of us?" she asked quietly. "If dragons have come again, what will the north do?" Jon's answer was a long time coming. "What it always does," he said at last, "endure." But even as he spoke, he could feel the warmth still burning in the token beneath his furs. The silver dragon of Valyria pulsed with life, as though answering a heartbeat not his own. That night, he dreamed. He stood once more beyond the wall, snow falling soft and endless. The forest was silent except for the rustle of wings. Out of the white came the Twilight dragon, vast and silent, its eyes like twin moons. Aelor sat upon its back, older now, his hair like fire and frost. "It's not over," he said. "The fire comes north. You will have to choose, ice or flame. There can be no peace between them." Jon woke before dawn, sweat freezing on his skin. The world beyond the porthole was calm and gray, yet the air felt charged, alive. Arya was already awake, sharpening her blade. "You dream again?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "A warning." She looked up, her expression unreadable. "Then we'd best be ready." Jon turned his gaze northward once more, toward the wall and the shadowed lands beyond. Somewhere in that endless waste, a dragon flew beneath the dawn. And for the first time since Daenerys' fall, the world of men trembled again before the coming of fire. The sea carried them south for 7 days before the winds turned cruel. The morning star creaked and groaned, her patched sails straining against the gray sky. Each morning, the horizon glowed faintly red, though the sun itself never showed. The crew muttered that it was a bad omen, that the sea remembered the fire that had burned upon it. Jon Snow said nothing. He stood at the prow, eyes fixed north, where the sky was always darker. Arya watched him in silence. The salt wind tangled her hair, and her gaze, sharp as ever, studied the lines of her brother's face. He had aged, she thought, though not as other men aged. It was as if the years had carved him from stone, worn, unyielding, marked by ghosts. On the 8th night, when the stars finally broke through the cloud, Arya joined him. The sea was calm, though beneath the quiet she could feel its strength, deep and endless. "You're thinking of him," she said. Jon didn't ask who she meant. The boy was born to fire. Men like that don't die easy. "You think he's alive, then?" "I know he is." He turned toward her. "When Daenerys died, I thought it was over. No more dragons, no more fire. But there's something older at work now, older than kings and thrones. That dragon he woke, it wasn't just a beast, it was a memory, alive and burning." Arya looked north. "And you think it's coming here?" I think it already has. The ship rolled gently beneath them, the sound of the waves steady as a heartbeat. Arya was silent for a long time. The North's not ready for another war, she said finally. The people barely remember the last one. Winter came and went and left nothing but bones. Jon gave a grim smile. The North is never ready. It just endures. That night, sleep came to neither of them. The sea's rhythm lulled the men below decks, but Jon dreamed with his eyes open, of snow falling on dragonfire, of a boy's voice calling through the wind. At dawn, the lookout cried from above, "Land!" They reached Eastwatch by midday. The great wall still stood, though the ice had blackened in places, scarred by time and storm. Ravens circled its heights, and the old gate groaned as the guards opened it. Men of the watch greeted Jon with wary respect. The black cloaks were thinner now, fewer than before. The new Lord Commander, Dennis Mallister's kin, came down to meet him. His gray beard rhymed with frost. "Snow," he said, with the faintest hint of disbelief. "You're supposed to be dead, or gone to the wilds for good." "I was," Jon said simply. The man's eyes flicked to Arya, then to Ghost, then back. "And now you come from the sea, with fire in your wake. The stories are already ahead of you. Ships burned on the horizon, a light in the northern sky. Some say a dragon was seen above Skagos." Jon nodded. "They're right." The Lord Commander's face hardened. "Then the wall will not hold long, not against dragons." "It's not the wall I fear for," Jon said quietly. "It's the North." He spent that night in his old chambers. The room was smaller than he remembered, or perhaps he was simply larger now. The walls smelled of cold stone and smoke. He laid the silver Targaryen token on the table beside a candle. Its surface caught the light and shimmered faintly, like a living thing. Arya came to him after the meal, a flask of warmed ale in her hand. "The men are uneasy," she said. "They remember what happened when dragons came last time." "They remember wrong," Jon said. "It wasn't the dragons that broke the world. It was the people who thought they could rule them." Arya leaned against the wall. "You sound like her." He looked up sharply. "Daenerys? She wanted to change the world too." Jon's jaw tightened. "And she did. But not the way she hoped." The candle sputtered, throwing long shadows across the room. For a while, neither spoke. Then Arya said, "So what now? Do we tell the North? The lords won't believe us until the fire's at their door." "We warn them anyway," Jon said. "Winterfell first. Sansa must hear it from us." The name drew a faint smile from Arya. "She'll be glad to see you, angry too, but glad." Jon gave a low laugh that held no joy. She was always the wiser of us. When morning came, the snow fell thick and silent. They rode south, past the shadowed woods and the frozen lakes, Ghost padding beside them. The world felt empty, as if it waited for something. On the third day, the wind shifted. The smell of smoke drifted down from the sky. Jon looked up and saw it, a faint streak of silver and violet cutting through the clouds. Aelor's dragon. It flew high above the land, circling slowly, its cry distant but clear. Arya drew her horse to a halt. "He's watching us." Jon's hand went to the token at his neck. It pulsed faintly, in rhythm with the dragon's call. They pressed on until nightfall and made camp near the ruins of a village long abandoned since the long night. The houses stood roofless, their walls covered in frost. Jon sat by the fire, the token in his palm. "He's calling," he said softly. Arya looked up from where she was tending the flames. "The boy?" Jon nodded. "He's north of the wall. The dragon took him there. Whatever waits in that ice, it's not done." Arya's eyes darkened. Then you'll go back. He looked at her across the fire. I swore I'd protect the realms of men. If that fire wakes again beneath the ice, it won't stop at the wall. Arya stood, the light of the flames dancing across her face. Then I'll go too. You think I've come all this way just to turn back? Jon said nothing, but the faintest hint of a smile touched his lips. You were always the stubborn one. Learned from the best, she said. Far above them, unseen in the darkness, the dragon's shadow passed over the snow. Its wings stirred the air, whispering through the night like a promise or a warning. Jon lay awake long after Arya slept. In his mind he saw the boy again, standing in the heart of a storm, firelight flickering in his eyes. Ice or flame, the boy had said. There can be no peace between them. Jon closed his hand around the token, its warmth steady against his skin. The snow fell softly outside, but beneath it he could almost hear the faint crackle of fire waiting to wake. When dawn came, the fire in their camp had burned itself to ash. But in the east, the sky glowed faintly silver, and Jon knew, whatever came next, the dragons had not finished with the north, and the north, in turn, had not finished with them. Snow fell thick and soundless upon the King's Road as Jon and Arya rode south. The white flakes clung to their cloaks, to the manes of their horses, to the black wolf padding silently beside them. Ghost left no tracks behind. The world seemed hushed, as though holding its breath. For days they passed through desolation. The war had ended years ago, but the scars remained. Burned villages, shattered keeps, graves half buried in snow. The north was quiet now, yet beneath that quiet Jon sensed unease, a waiting. He felt it in the wind, in the frozen earth beneath his horse's hooves. On the fourth day, they crossed the White Knife. The river ran sluggish and gray, crusted with ice at its edges. There they met riders wearing the direwolf sigil of House Stark. When they recognized Jon, they reined in with wide eyes. "Lord Snow," said their leader, a weathered man with a scar across his cheek. "Winterfell's been expecting you. The lady has dreamt of your coming." Jon frowned. "Dreamt?" The man nodded. "She said you'd come before the next moon turned, and that you'd bring winter's shadow with you." Arya exchanged a look with her brother. "Sansa always did know more than she let on," she said. By dusk, the towers of Winterfell rose before them, black against the snow. Smoke curled from the chimneys, warm and familiar, yet something in Jon's chest tightened as he passed through the gates. He had not thought ever to return. The great hall glowed with firelight. Servants moved quietly among the trestle tables, and the smell of baked bread and roasting meat filled the air. At the high seat sat Sansa Stark, queen in the north, her auburn hair shining like a crown beneath the light. When she saw them, she rose, a smile breaking through her poise. "Jon," she said, "and Arya." They embraced, long, wordless. The years fell away for a moment, though the weight of the world pressed close again soon enough. When they sat, Sansa's gaze sharpened, reading their faces. "You bring grim tidings," she said. "I can see it." Jon did not deny it. "There's a dragon loose in the north, and a boy who bears Targaryen blood. He's heading beyond the wall." The hall fell still. Even the fires seemed to quiet. Sansa's fingers tightened around the arms of her chair. "Another Targaryen," she said softly. "Then the realm will bleed again." "This one's different," Arya said. "He's a child, but what he carries, what follows him, it's not meant for any throne. It's something older, something that might burn the world." Sansa's blue eyes met Jon's. "And you mean to follow him?" I swore an oath once, Jon said, to guard the realms of men. If that boy brings the doom north of the wall, I'll not sit in halls while it comes for us. Sansa leaned back, studying him in silence. You always did run toward the fire, she said at last, and you always came back with scars. He almost smiled. You have my word. I'll try to bring fewer this time. But her expression softened, and she reached out, taking his hand. Bring yourself back. That's all I ask. That night, the three of them spoke long into the dark. Sansa told them of strange rumors from the coast. Ships burned to their keels, fishermen who spoke of lights beneath the waves, a warmth in the sea where none should be. Jon listened, the unease in his heart deepening. Fire stirring in the waters, dragons in the sky, and north, beyond the wall, an old power awakening beneath the ice. When he slept, the dreams returned. He stood once more on Skagos, the mountain split open, the dragon's wings blotting out the stars. Aelor's voice called through the storm. Fire cannot be unmade, only bound, and when it breaks its chains, ice will answer. He woke before dawn, the words burning in his mind. At first light, he found Arya already in the yard, sparring with a young guardsman. She moved with the same deadly grace he remembered, her blade flashing in the pale sun. When she saw him, she lowered her sword and grinned. Couldn't sleep either. Dreams, Jon said. Then we both had the same ghost whispering to us. Before they could say more, the horns sounded from the walls. 3 long, mournful blasts. Jon froze. Riders from the north, shouted a voice from the gatehouse. 12 men, coming fast. By the time they reached the courtyard, the riders had arrived, black-cloaked, frostbitten, their faces gray with exhaustion. The lead rider fell from his horse, half dead. Jon knelt beside him. Eastwatch, the man rasped. We saw it, beyond the wall, a shadow of wings. The snow burned. Jon's heart sank. The boy? The man nodded weakly. He walks with it, and others walk behind him. Others? Arya asked. The man's eyes were wide and glassy. Not dead, not living. The fire woke them. He died with those words on his lips. Sansa's face had gone pale. You mean to go beyond the wall again? Jon rose. If he's not stopped, there may be no wall left. Arya stepped forward, her hand on her sword. Then we go together. Sansa's voice broke through the wind. If you do this, the North may lose you both. Jon turned to her, meeting her gaze. If we do nothing, the North will lose everything. That night, as the castle slept, Jon went to the godswood. The heart tree stood ancient and red, its face solemn beneath the falling snow. He knelt before it, long claw laid across his knees. I've no gods left to pray to, he said softly. But if any still watch, let me not fail them again. The wind whispered through the branches like a sigh. When he rose, Arya was waiting at the edge of the grove, Ghost at her side. Ready? She asked. Jon nodded. We ride at dawn. They left Winterfell beneath a sky of gray and crimson. Sansa watched from the battlements until they vanished into the snow, 2 dark figures and a white wolf heading north. The cold deepened as they neared the wall. The forests thinned, the rivers froze solid, and the wind carried whispers like voices of the dead. At night, Jon saw fire flicker beyond the horizon. Strange lights, green and gold, dancing above the frozen land. On the 7th night, they camped near the ruins of an old watchtower. The stars burned bright and cruel above. Arya sat close to the fire, sharpening needle. Do you think we'll find him? She asked. Jon stared into the flames. We'll find something. whether it's him or what he's become, that I don't know. She looked up. And if he's lost? Jon met her gaze. Then I'll do what must be done. The wind rose, scattering snow across their camp. Somewhere far off, faint but clear, a dragon's cry echoed through the night. Ghost lifted his head and howled in answer. Jon listened until the sound faded into the endless dark. Then he lay down beside the dying fire and whispered, "The night remembers." And in the cold silence that followed, he almost thought he heard a voice reply, soft, distant, and full of sorrow. And so does the fire. The wall loomed ahead like a mountain carved from moonlight, vast and eternal, stretching across the frozen world. Jon Snow and Arya rode beneath its shadow, the air sharp with frost. The old gate at Castle Black creaked open at their approach, and for a moment, Jon felt the weight of a lifetime settle upon him, the years of oaths and duty, of ghosts that would not rest. The men of the watch met them in silence. Their numbers were fewer still since his last passing, their faces worn and hollow. Black Brothers, they called themselves, but their eyes were pale as the snow they lived among. The new Lord Commander, Dennis Mallister's nephew, came down to greet them, his breath clouding in the cold. "You return again, Lord Snow," he said, not unkindly. "I thought the world south of the wall had swallowed you for good." "It nearly did," Jon replied. "But the dead don't rest easy, it seems. Not even the dragons." At that, the man's expression darkened. "There are tales. Sailors out of Hardhome speak of lights in the sky, of fire that burns without smoke. The wildlings whisper of a boy who walks with flame in his shadow." Jon nodded. "Aelor Targaryen. He's beyond the wall now, with a dragon the size of a keep, and something else stirs behind him." The commander drew a sharp breath. "You mean to go after him?" Jon's answer was simple. "Aye." Arya stood beside him, her cloak snapping in the wind. "So do I." The man looked between them, measuring their resolve. At last he said, "Then may the gods have mercy on you both, for the land beyond has none." They rested only a night. By morning the gate groaned open again, spilling pale light onto the snowfields beyond. Jon felt the cold bite deep as they crossed into the true north. Ghost padded ahead, silent as ever, his red eyes gleaming like coals. The land stretched endless before them, white hills and black forests, rivers frozen into mirrors. Yet beneath that silence was movement, faint and strange. Shadows shifted at the corners of their sight. The wind carried voices that were not the wind's. On the second day, they passed the ruins of Craster's Keep, now little more than charred timbers and snow-choked pits. Jon halted there, dismounting. "Do you remember this place?" Arya asked. "Aye," he said. "Too well." He walked among the blackened beams. Here, once, men had fallen to madness, to blood and betrayal. The ground still reeked faintly of old smoke, though the years had buried it deep. He knelt, pressing a gloved hand to the ice. "Fire burned here once," he murmured. "Now it's cold, but not dead." Arya watched him, uneasy. "You sound like Melisandre." Jon rose. "She said once that death and fire were the same in the end. I never understood her words. Now I think I might." They rode on. That night, they camped beside a frozen lake. The moon hung low, casting the ice in silver. Jon took first watch, his cloak drawn close, Longclaw resting across his knees. At some hour near dawn, the wind shifted. He felt it before he heard it. A deep, distant hum that set the ice trembling. Then came the roar, faint but unmistakable, echoing across the mountains. The dragon. Jon woke Arya with a touch. She sat up at once, eyes sharp. "North," he said. "He's close." They broke camp before the sun rose. The tracks were there in the snow, massive prints half filled with frost, each one the size of a man. They followed them into the foothills, where steam rose from fissures in the ground. The air grew warm, the snow melting beneath their boots. By midday, they reached a narrow pass between cliffs black with ice. The heat rising from the stones made the air shimmer, and a strange smell lingered. Metal, smoke, and something older. "Valyrian," Arya said softly. Jon nodded. "The same scent as Skagos. He's close." A shadow crossed the sun then, vast and swift. They looked up as the Twilight dragon descended, its wings beating thunder. It landed upon the ridge above them, claws sinking into the rock, eyes glowing pale blue. Steam rose from its nostrils, and its scales gleamed like living dusk, and upon its back sat Aelor. He looked older now, though only days had passed since the burning of Skagos. The fire had marked him, his skin faintly luminescent, his eyes twin coals of amethyst light. He wore no cloak, no crown, only a chain of silver around his neck. "Jon Snow," he said, his voice carrying strange echoes. "You shouldn't have come." Jon's breath misted in the air. "You said the fire would wake again. I came to stop it." The boy's expression was almost pitying. "You can't stop what was born before the world had walls. The fire remembers, even when men forget." Arya's hand went to Needle. "And what are you now? The fire's servant?" Aelor smiled, though there was sorrow in it. "Its vessel, its voice, it needed blood to walk again, and mine was enough." Jon stepped forward. "You're a child, Aelor. The fire uses you. It'll burn you as it burned her." The boy's eyes flashed. She was unworthy. She tried to rule flame with mercy. Fire needs strength. It needs purpose. "Purpose?" Arya said coldly. "And what's that? To burn another world to ash?" Aelor's gaze drifted toward the frozen horizon. "To cleanse it. To make it new." The dragon shifted behind him, its wings stirring the snow. Jon drew Longclaw. The pale blade caught the light of the dragon's flame, glimmering white. "Then it ends here." For a long moment, the boy said nothing. Then he raised his hand. The ground split open. Fire roared upward, blinding bright. Jon and Arya were thrown back as the dragon screamed, the heat searing even through their furs. Jon rolled to his feet, lungs burning. The snow around him was gone, replaced by blackened earth. The boy stood in the midst of the flame, untouched. His voice was soft, almost pleading. "I don't want to kill you. You carry the ice, as I carry fire. It's not meant to end in war. It's meant to balance." Jon took a step forward, the wind whipping his cloak. "Balance doesn't come from burning the world, boy. It comes from protecting it." The dragon reared, its eyes fixed on him. For a heartbeat, Jon thought it would strike. But the boy spoke a word in Valyrian, and the beast stilled. Aelor looked down at him, weary. "Then protect it, Jon Snow. Protect it from me." And before Jon could answer, the dragon's wings beat once, twice, and it soared skyward, trailing fire across the gray heavens. The storm that followed swallowed the world. Snow and ash mingled, falling together. Arya reached Jon's side, her face pale. "What did he mean?" she asked. Jon stared into the sky, where the dragon vanished into cloud. "That he's already beyond saving." They stood there in silence, the wind howling through the pass. Then, faintly, from far to the north, came another sound, not a roar, but a crack, deep and long, like the breaking of the world's spine. Arya's eyes met his. "The wall?" Jon turned toward the sound, his heart turning to stone. The wall, and above them, the sky burned faintly red. The sound rolled across the frozen wilderness like the cry of a dying god. It shook the snow from the trees and sent flocks of ravens screaming into the gray sky. The wall had stood for 8,000 years, but now its voice carried the sound of breaking. Jon Snow and Arya stared north, where the horizon shimmered faintly red. The air trembled beneath their feet. The ground itself seemed to breathe, slow, vast, and full of grief. "The wall is cracking," Arya said, her voice low. Jon nodded. "Not by storm or time, by fire." They rode hard through the storm that followed. The wind clawed at their cloaks, snow stung their eyes, and the earth rumbled beneath them. Ghost ran ahead, a white shadow against the dark, his howls swallowed by the wind. The cold was savage, but it carried the scent of smoke, dry, bitter, and wrong. By dusk, they reached the foothills overlooking the Great Wall. What they saw froze their blood. The wall still stood, but its heart glowed red. Steam rose from cracks running like veins through the ice, and from within came a dim, pulsing light. A fissure split the center of the eastern face, and from that wound spilled a slow cascade of molten ice that hissed and boiled on the snow. Jon dismounted, his boots crunching through slush. "He's here," he said. "The boy, the dragon." Arya's breath steamed in the air. "Then we finish this before the wall falls." They descended to the base, where the ice gleamed like glass. There they found the remains of men, rangers of the Watch, frozen mid-stride, their black cloaks scorched and stiff. Some had burned, others seemed turned to crystal. Jon knelt beside one, brushing frost from the man's face. "I knew him," he said quietly. "Corin, son of the last hearth. He served under me once." Arya's eyes swept the horizon. "They didn't die fighting. They died watching." The crack widened above them with a sound like thunder. Heat burst from within, melting the snow around their boots. Jon looked up and saw it then, through the haze of steam and fire, a figure walking along the top of the wall, outlined in pale flame. Aelor. His hair streamed like silver fire, his eyes bright as stars. Behind him loomed the Twilight dragon, wings folded like a cloak. The beast's breath rolled down the wall in great waves of heat, turning the ancient ice to mist. Jon drew Longclaw, though the blade's glow seemed pitiful beside the boy's fire. "He means to break it," he said. Arya's jaw tightened. "Then we climb." The ice was hot to the touch, slick and hissing beneath their gloves. Steam coiled around them as they ascended, the heat searing through their furs. Ghost waited below, pacing, his eyes following them with unease. Halfway up, the air grew thick and bright. Through the mist, they could see shapes moving, shadows of men, but wrong. Their outlines shimmered, half flesh, half flame. Jon felt his stomach turn cold. "Burned ones," he whispered. The creatures turned toward them, their faces molten and formless. They moved without sound, climbing the ice as easily as walking on stone. Arya drew needle. "They're not alive." "No," Jon said, gripping Longclaw, "but they remember how to kill." The first came at him fast, claws of molten bone scraping against his sword. Longclaw met the strike, the Valyrian steel biting deep. The creature burst apart, scattering embers into the wind. Arya moved beside him, swift and precise, cutting through another that lunged at her from the mist. For every one that fell, 2 more appeared. Their bodies were smoke and memory, but their touch burned like wildfire. The climb became a battle, every handhold slick with heat. Jon's cloak caught fire once. He tore it free and let it fall into the abyss below. At last, they reached the summit. The world above the wall was a wasteland of steam and flame. The boy stood at its center, his arms outstretched, the dragon behind him like a living mountain. The ice beneath his feet glowed red. Jon stepped forward, sword in hand. "Aelor!" he shouted. "This isn't your fight. The wall was built to protect, not to burn." The boy turned. His face was calm, his expression almost tender. "It was built to divide," he said, "to keep ice from fire and fire from ice. But they were never meant to be apart. The world is dying because it forgot what it once was." "You'll kill everyone," Arya said, her voice hard as steel. Aelor's gaze flicked to her. "Death isn't always the end. Sometimes it's how the world begins again." Jon's grip tightened on Longclaw. Daenerys thought the same. She believed she could burn the world to save it. "I killed her for it." The boy's eyes softened with pity. "And still you carry her blood's burden." He lifted his hand, and the dragon roared. Flame leapt from its jaws, a white inferno. Jon moved before he thought. The fire struck Longclaw, splitting around him in a storm of light. The blade screamed, Valyrian steel drinking the heat but shuddering beneath it. Arya darted to his side, her face set in grim determination. The dragon's second breath came like a hurricane. Jon and Arya dove aside, the blast scorching the wall where they had stood. Cracks spidered through the ice. Jon rose to one knee, panting. "If you want to bring the world together, boy, then start by sparing it." Aelor's hand trembled. "I can't stop it now. The fire's awake. It wants to live." "Then die with it!" Arya cried, and she leapt. Needle flashed silver, swift as a falling star. But before the blade could reach him, the dragon's tail swept through the steam, striking her aside. She hit the ice hard and slid toward the edge. Jon ran to her, catching her wrist before she fell. The ice beneath them groaned, and through it glowed the red heart of fire. Above, Aelor cried out, not in anger, but in pain. His light flickered, dimmed. The dragon roared, as if mourning. The boy fell to his knees, clutching his chest. Jon saw his chance. He let Arya climb to safety, then strode forward. Longclaw gleamed in his hands, its edge pale against the fire. "You said fire needs strength," he said. "Then it needs a man strong enough to end it." He drove the sword through the ice at Aelor's feet. The blade sank deep. A sound like thunder tore the air as fire and ice met in a single blinding flash. The wall screamed. The ground shook. For one heartbeat, Jon saw everything. The dragon's wings spread against the heavens, the boy's eyes wide with sorrow, Arya reaching for him through the storm. Then the light consumed it all. When the blaze faded, the wall still stood, but its fire was gone. Steam drifted where the dragon had been. The boy was nowhere to be seen. Jon lay upon the ice, breath ragged, his sword beside him. Arya crawled to his side, blood on her lip. "Jon?" He opened his eyes slowly. The token at his neck was cold now, lifeless. He looked north, where the sky had turned the color of ash. "The fire sleeps again," he said hoarsely. Arya's gaze followed his. "And if it wakes?" Jon closed his eyes, the weight of the world heavy upon him. "Then we'll be here to meet it." The wind rose, scattering snow over the broken summit. Below, Ghost howled, the sound echoing through the empty world. And high above, for a heartbeat only, a single streak of silver flame crossed the heavens before vanishing into the dark. The dawn after the firestorm was pale and silent. The sky above the wall had turned a color Jon Snow had never seen before. A cold gold, faint as the dying glow of embers buried in ash. The world seemed to hold its breath. The wind had ceased. Even the snow no longer fell. It was as if the north itself waited to see whether it yet lived. Jon stood upon the frost-cracked summit of the wall, his black cloak stiff with ice. Around him stretched ruin, the stones half melted and refrozen, the ice fissured into vast ribs of glass. Longclaw's blade had blackened along its edge, but it still caught the dawn light. Beside him, Arya crouched near the rim, her breath misting faintly. Her eyes were fixed on the emptiness beyond the wall. "He's gone," she said. "The dragon, the boy, gone." Jon nodded slowly. For now. Below them, the shattered remnants of Castle Black smoked faintly. The fire that had burst from the ice had burned everything living, yet somehow the great wall still stood. It was lower now, its crown broken, but it endured. Ghost moved among the ruin, sniffing at the blackened stones. When he raised his head and howled, the sound echoed strange and hollow, as if the wall itself answered. Jon's hand went to the silver token at his chest, the sigil of the three-headed dragon. It was cold now, darker than before, the metal dulled. "He burned himself out," Jon murmured. "The boy and his dragon both. Ice and fire. Neither could master the other." Arya rose, brushing snow from her leathers. "Then we've done what we came to do. Let's go home." Home. The word struck something deep in him. He thought of Winterfell's towers, of Sansa's calm voice, and the Godswood's red leaves. But the pull of the north was still strong. The wall might stand, but what had stirred beneath it would not sleep forever. "Soon," Jon said. "There's something I have to see first." They descended along the ruined ice steps, where once the wall had shimmered blue. Now it glowed faintly gray, as though the light had been drained from it. At the base, the land was transformed. The snow had melted into vast sheets of glassy frost, frozen mid-wave where the fire had met the cold. Strange patterns rippled through the ice, swirls and sigils, faintly red, like writing left by the flames themselves. Arya touched one with the tip of her glove. "It's Valyrian script," she said. "The same I saw carved into the stones on Skagos." Jon bent close, reading the faint runes. Dracarys Zobrax, he made out, the words of fire and shadow. "The doom's mark," he said quietly. "It spread farther than we thought." He straightened and looked north, toward the frozen wilderness beyond the wall. The land stretched endless and empty, but far in the distance something shimmered, a faint line of light across the horizon. Arya saw it too. "What is that?" "I don't know," Jon said, "but it's not the sun." They mounted again, riding north. The air grew colder with every mile. The wind no longer carried snow, but fine ash, gray as dust. The silence was heavy. No birds called, no beasts moved. Even Ghost's paws made no sound on the frozen ground. As night fell, a pale glow rose ahead of them, and the sky darkened to violet. The light came from a valley between two black ridges. When they reached its edge, Jon reined in sharply. Before them lay a lake of glass, smooth, vast, and gleaming with its own inner fire. Beneath the surface burned slow-moving shapes, as if something vast slept below, half buried in the ice. Arya whispered, "Dragons." Jon shook his head. "Not living ones. Bones, perhaps. Frozen fire. Whatever died here long ago is waking again." The air above the lake shimmered with heat, though the ground around them was frozen solid. And in that shimmering haze, a voice spoke. A whisper, faint but clear. Jon Snow. He turned, heart hammering. "Who's there?" Arya's hand went to her sword, but no shape moved in the darkness. Only the voice, now softer, more sorrowful. "You ended her fire once. You bound it again. But the world is built on flame, Jon Snow. And flame remembers. The sound came from everywhere. Sky, ice, within his very bones. He knew the voice, Daenerys's voice. Jon gripped Longclaw's hilt until his knuckles whitened. "You're not her. You're what's left of her dreams." "Dreams are what make kings and monsters," the whisper replied. "You cannot kill what was promised." The lake pulsed then, brightening with sudden light. Beneath the glass, shapes moved, vast serpentine shadows coiling in the deep. The fire under the ice flared like a heartbeat. Arya backed away. "Jon, I see it," he said. From the center of the lake rose a column of steam, and through it burst a figure, small at first, then growing, wings unfurling like banners of light. It was the Twilight dragon, reborn of ice and flame. Its scales glimmered half silver, half white, its eyes blazing with ghostly blue fire, and upon its brow, like a spark caught in the wind, hovered the faint image of a boy's face. "Aelor." The dragon's cry tore through the air, a sound both mournful and defiant. It circled the valley once, then landed upon the ice with a shuddering crack. Jon and Arya stared up as it folded its wings, steam rising from its nostrils. Jon stepped forward. "Aelor!" The boy's voice answered, carried on the wind. "You tried to end it, but the world won't let go of what it needs. Fire brings death, yes, but also life. The north will burn, and from the ashes, the wall will rise again." Arya's eyes narrowed. "Not while we live." The dragon bent its head low, and Jon could see the faint flicker of sadness in its eyes. "You can't fight what you are," Aelor said softly. "You're of both, ice and fire." Jon raised Longclaw, though it felt suddenly heavy as grief. "Then let me choose which one wins." He struck the ice at his feet, driving the blade deep. Cracks spread across the glass lake like lightning. The fire beneath surged upward, meeting the cold. Steam and flame collided in an explosion of light. The dragon screamed, its body dissolving into a storm of sparks. The ground heaved, throwing Jon backward. He hit the snow hard, vision swimming. When the light faded, the lake was gone. In its place lay a vast plain of dull gray frost, still and lifeless. Arya crawled to him, coughing from the smoke. "Jon," she said, "did we?" He looked around slowly. "He's gone," he said, "for now." Above them, the stars burned sharp and cold. The faint gold of dawn touched the horizon once more. They rode south in silence. Behind them, the wall stood broken but whole enough to hold. The lake did not stir again. But as the wind shifted, Jon heard something faint in its sigh, a sound like wings far off, flying toward the dawn. He said nothing. Some truths were better left to the silence. Arya rode beside him, the wolf padding close behind, and together they vanished into the white waste, two dark riders bound by blood and duty, carrying with them the last secret of fire and ice. The world slept again, but its dreams still smoldered. Winterfell lay beneath a soft shroud of snow when Jon Snow and Arya Stark returned. The sun hung low behind gray clouds, and the air tasted of wood smoke and frost. From the battlements, the dire wolf banners snapped in the cold wind, their cloth stiff with ice. The guards at the gate barely recognized them, two figures cloaked in shadow and travel, faces weathered by fire and cold. But when Ghost padded forward, white as the snow itself, they fell silent and opened the gates without a word. Sansa met them in the courtyard. She was dressed in gray and white, her hair braided like a queen's crown, her expression calm and unreadable. Behind her stood her bannermen, and beside her, Maester Colmar, with ink stains on his fingers and worry in his eyes. Jon dismounted first. The silence between the siblings held for a heartbeat. Then Sansa stepped forward and embraced him. It was a brief, fierce thing, as though she feared he might vanish again if she lingered too long. "You're alive," she said softly. "Truly alive." "For now," Jon said, his voice quiet as the snow. Her gaze flicked past him to Arya. "And you still chase ghosts?" Arya smiled thinly. "This one caught us first." Inside the hall, fires roared and candles burned low. Sansa dismissed her men and listened as Jon told all: the dragon's awakening, the boy of Valyrian blood, the fire at the wall, the strange lake beyond. His words filled the chamber like the tolling of a slow, dark bell. When he finished, silence hung heavy. Only the crackle of the hearth broke it. "So it's done," Sansa said at last. "The fire is bound again." Jon shook his head. "Bound, not ended. The world won't let it die. Not truly. There's something in it that remembers the flame." Maester Colmar cleared his throat. "My lord, if this is true, the signs fit the old writings, the tales from before Aegon's time. The world of men began in the struggle between frost and flame. Perhaps it must one day end the same way." Arya leaned back in her chair, her eyes sharp as the edge of a blade. "Not while we breathe." Sansa regarded them both for a long while. "You'll leave again, won't you?" Jon looked into the fire. "There's still something stirring beyond the wall. I can feel it. The dragon's shadow is gone, but the fire it woke may not sleep forever." "Then who will rule the north when you chase ghosts?" Sansa asked. "You will," Jon said simply. "The north is yours. It always was." Her eyes softened, but she did not smile. "You never were good at staying still." "I've never been good at peace," he replied. That night, he walked alone in the Godswood. The snow fell soundless through the red branches of the heart tree. He could almost imagine the gods watching through the carved eyes. Old, patient, and weary. He knelt in the snow, his hands bare to the cold. "If there's purpose in this," he murmured, "let me see it. If there's peace to come, let it be for them, not for me." The wind sighed through the weirwood leaves like a whisper. He thought it said his name, soft and mournful. When he returned to the hall, Arya was waiting, her face half hidden beneath her hood. "You're leaving," she said. He nodded. "Before dawn." "Then I'm coming with you." Jon looked at her long and hard. "You've seen enough of death." "So have you," she said, "but you still go." He could not deny her. She had been forged by the same winter as he. At dawn, they rode from Winterfell once more, heading north along the King's Road. The world was still, the air heavy with the promise of another storm. Ghost followed close, silent as a shadow. For 3 days they rode through lands buried in snow. The rivers were frozen, the forests silent. At night they camped beneath the stars, their fires small and careful. Jon spoke little, but his eyes turned often to the north, to where the horizon blurred with cloud and memory. On the 4th day the wind changed. It came from the sea, cold, sharp, and faintly sulphurous. Arya noticed it first. "Smells like Skagos again," she said. Jon's hand went to the silver token at his throat. It had lain cold since the walls burning, but now it throbbed faintly, a heartbeat of heat. "Not Skagos," he said. "Something older." That night, his dreams returned. He stood upon a shore of black glass, the sea molten and red beneath a broken moon. From the waves rose a woman cloaked in shadow and fire. Her eyes were silver, her hair streamed like living flame. "Jon Snow," she said, "you keep killing the fire, but it always finds you again. Why?" He could not answer. She reached toward him, her hand glowing with heat. "Because you are its other half." He woke, drenched in sweat, though the night was bitter cold. Arya slept nearby, one hand on her sword, the other resting against the ground. Ghost stirred, but made no sound. The token burned faintly against his chest. By morning, clouds had gathered thick and dark above them. The snow came fast, swallowing the world in white. They pressed on until noon, when they reached the broken fields where the first men had once raised their stones. The monoliths jutted from the snow like black teeth, each carved with strange, spiraling marks. Arya traced one with her glove. "These aren't runes from the north," she said. "They're older." "Valyrian," Jon murmured, but changed, twisted. The wind rose, carrying faint whispers. At first he thought it was the storm, but then he heard it clearer, voices murmuring in a tongue he almost knew. Words of fire, words of ice. Arya stepped closer to him. "Do you hear them?" Jon's eyes narrowed. "They're calling something." Before he could speak again, the earth shuddered. The stones glowed red at their cores. From the snow between them rose a thin pillar of light, stretching toward the sky. The air crackled with heat. "Jon!" Arya shouted, but he was already moving. The light drew him, its pull irresistible. The token at his chest blazed like a brand. He felt warmth flood his limbs, terrible and bright. Then, through the radiance, he saw her. The woman from his dream, formed of smoke and flame, her face shifting between Daenerys and the unknown. Her voice filled his head. "The fire sleeps in your blood. The ice holds it. Together they make the world." "Why me?" he whispered. "Because you are both. You always were." The vision flared, then vanished. The light collapsed inward, leaving only the snow and silence. Arya rushed to him, her eyes wide. "Jon! What happened?" He looked down at his hands. They were unburned, yet faint trails of light pulsed beneath the skin, fading slowly. The token lay cold again. "Something's waking," he said. "Something that's not done with me." Arya's expression hardened. "Then we'll face it together." Jon looked north once more, where the storm boiled dark and endless. "Aye," he said. "Together." The wind howled through the standing stones like the roar of some great beast. Above them, unseen, a faint glimmer of light flickered across the clouds, silver and blue, the color of twilight flame. The fire had not died. It had only changed its name. The storm did not ease for 3 days. The wind screamed like a living thing, tearing at cloaks and tents, driving needles of ice into the skin. Jon and Arya pressed north through white oblivion, their horses heads down and steaming. Ghost padding silently ahead, a phantom in the endless drift. The snow buried all sound, all horizon, all sense of time. When the wind at last broke, they found themselves on a high plain ringed by black hills. The sky above was a low gray dome, and the air smelled faintly of iron. Beneath the thin crust of snow, the ground was stone, old and pitted, carved with faint runes that glimmered when the light struck them. "This place feels wrong," Arya said, her hand on Needle's hilt. Jon dismounted slowly, his breath pluming before him. "It's older than wrong," he murmured. "Older than men." He knelt and brushed the frost from one of the stones. Beneath the ice were markings, spirals, circles, and a symbol like a sun split in two. The grooves still glowed faintly red, as if fire had once burned through them and never fully died. Ghost whined low in his throat. The hair along his spine stood bristled. Jon rose. "He was here." Arya looked up sharply. "Aelor?" He nodded. "The fire's scent lingers." They followed it across the plain until they reached the mouth of a vast cavern. The entrance yawned wide, rimed with frost that glittered like glass. Warm air exhaled from within, warm and carrying a strange sound, a deep pulse, like the beating of a distant heart. Jon stepped forward first, Longclaw in hand. Arya followed close, her movements silent as shadow. The passage sloped downward, the light dimming behind them. The deeper they went, the warmer it grew, until the walls themselves gleamed wetly. The air hummed, low and steady. At last, they reached a vast chamber deep within the earth. A red glow filled it, seeping from cracks in the rock. In the center rose a pillar of black stone, smooth and round, as if carved by fire. Around its base lay bones, human, dragon, and beasts unknown, fused together in melted heaps. Arya whispered, "7 hells." Jon moved closer. The pillar's surface rippled faintly like water, though solid to the touch. He felt warmth seep into his fingertips, followed by a rush of sound, voices, distant and echoing. Fire remembers. He drew his hand back sharply. "It's alive," he said. Before Arya could answer, the glow deepened. Lines of light spread across the floor, forming a pattern, circles within circles, like the marks on the plain above. At their center, the air shimmered, and from the light stepped a figure. Aelor. He looked unchanged, pale hair, violet eyes burning with inner fire. But his face was calm now, almost serene. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "You said that before," Jon replied. "And I came anyway." The boy's gaze drifted to the blade in Jon's hand. Valyrian steel. It remembers the fire too. All things made in the forge do. Arya stepped forward, her voice hard. "You nearly broke the wall. How many more must die before you stop?" Aelor's expression did not change. The wall was never meant to last. It was a wound, not a shield. It kept the world bleeding, kept the cold from the flame. But now, he gestured toward the pillar. Now it can be whole again. Jon frowned. "You mean to break it completely?" "To mend it," the boy said. "Fire and ice together, bound in the heart of the world. The forge beneath the earth still burns. It calls for both." "And you mean to feed it?" Jon said. Aelor's eyes met his. "Yes, but not alone." The light of the chamber flared brighter. From the shadows above, something vast stirred, a shape unfurling wings of molten glass. The Twilight dragon descended, its scales rippling with every color of flame. Steam rose from its nostrils, and its eyes burned blue-white. Arya raised her sword, but Jon caught her arm. "No," he said quietly. "Steel won't stop what was never truly born." Aelor stepped closer. "You know what it asks," he said to Jon. "You felt it at the wall. The world can't live half awake. One must yield to the other, or both perish." Jon's chest ached. He saw again Daenerys in the throne room, her face streaked with ash, her eyes bright with madness and sorrow. "You sound like her," he said. "She was half a truth," Aelor replied. "You are the other half, ice and fire. It ends with you." Arya moved between them. "He's not your sacrifice, boy." Aelor's voice softened. "It isn't sacrifice. It's balance. One flame to end the rest." Jon stared at the dragon. Its breath filled the cavern, its body pulsing with light. The heat was unbearable now. The very air seemed alive. Beneath it all, he heard the steady heartbeat, the same rhythm that thrummed in his chest. He understood then. The pillar, the dragon, the boy, they were one, parts of the same thing. And it wanted him. Arya must have seen it in his face. "Don't!" she said fiercely. "Don't you dare!" He turned to her. "If this ends here, maybe it spares the rest. Maybe there'll be peace at last." "Peace for who?" she said, tears freezing on her lashes. "Not for me, not for the North." He smiled faintly. "You'll endure. You always do." Before she could stop him, he stepped into the circle of light. The dragon reared, wings spread wide. Aelor raised his hands, and the pillar split open, revealing a core of pure flame. Jon looked once more at his sister. "Tell them I tried." Then he drove Longclaw down into the heart of the light. The world exploded. Fire met ice, a blinding collision that shook the mountain to its roots. The dragon screamed, a sound like the tearing of the sky. Arya was thrown back, the heat burning her skin even through her furs. She saw Jon stand in the midst of it all, his figure wreathed in silver flame, his eyes white with light. For a heartbeat, he seemed to glow brighter than the fire itself. Then both vanished. Silence fell. The pillar was gone, the dragon gone, the chamber still and cold once more. Only the faintest trace of warmth lingered in the air, and a smell of rain. Arya crawled to where her brother had stood. There was nothing but his sword, its steel turned black and glassy, the hilt cold to the touch. She picked it up and held it close, though it burned her hands with sorrow. When she climbed from the cavern, dawn was breaking over the plain. The storm had passed. The sky was clear, streaked with silver and red. Ghost waited at the mouth of the cave. When Arya stepped into the light, the great wolf lifted his head and howled, a long, mournful cry that rolled across the north. Arya stood beside him, her face pale but her eyes fierce. She looked to the horizon, where the sun rose weak and distant. "You're free now, Jon," she whispered, "but the world's yours still." And as she turned south, the light behind her flared one last time. For an instant, the dawn blazed with silver and crimson, as if the sky itself remembered him. Then the fire faded, leaving only the snow, the wind, and the sound of a wolf's cry echoing through the endless winter. The snows came harder in the weeks that followed, thick and relentless, until even the forests bowed beneath their weight. The north grew quiet once more. Word of fire and dragons faded into rumor, then into song, and the songs were half believed even by those who sang them. Winterfell stood strong beneath its white mantle, smoke curling from its chimneys, the warm light of the great hall spilling into the night. Yet Sansa Stark, Queen of the North, often stood at the window of her solar, her hands resting upon the cold stone, eyes fixed toward the north. She listened for something she could not name, the sound of wings, or perhaps the voice of ghosts. When Arya returned, she came alone. Her horse limped, and Ghost padded at her side, white fur streaked with soot and blood. She bore no banner and no smile, only the blackened blade that had once been Longclaw strapped across her saddle. The guards at the gate did not speak. They had seen that look before, long ago on another face. Inside, the great hall fell silent as Arya entered. The firelight caught her eyes, gray and hard as tempered steel. Sansa rose from the high seat, her expression unreadable. "You found him," she said. It was not a question. Arya nodded. "I did." "Then where is he?" Arya drew the sword from her back. The steel, once shining bright, now drank the light around it. "Gone," she said. "He saved us all again, and it cost him everything." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Sansa's composure faltered, and she turned away, one hand pressed to her mouth. The fire crackled, the wind howled beyond the walls, and the weight of another Stark's death settled over them like snow. When at last she spoke, her voice was steady. He was never meant to rest. Arya set the sword upon the long table. "But his fire rests now. I felt it. The north is safe." "Safe," Sansa repeated softly, as if testing the word. "Safe never lasts." That night, they held a feast in Jon's honor. There was no laughter, only quiet toasts and the sound of horns blowing low. The people of the north raised cups to the man who had been their king, their commander, their ghost. Some said the snow beyond the wall glowed faintly for nights after, as if the heavens themselves burned in mourning. Arya did not stay for the songs. She slipped away before dawn, walking alone to the godswood. The heart tree waited, red leaves whispering in the dim morning light. Ghost followed and lay beside the roots, his eyes fixed upon her. Arya knelt in the snow. "I tried to bring him back," she whispered, "but he chose the flame. He always chose duty." The wind stirred the branches above. For a moment, it almost seemed the tree sighed. When she left the godswood, she found Sansa waiting beneath the archway. "Will you stay this time?" Sansa asked. Arya shook her head. "There's nothing left for me here." "Then where will you go?" "Wherever the road still leads." She hesitated, glancing toward the north. "Maybe one day, when the snows melt, I'll see him again." Sansa's lips curved into a faint, sad smile. The Starks always find each other. They embraced, and for a moment the sisters were children again, two girls beneath a castle that had seen too much grief. Then Arya turned and walked into the pale morning, her cloak snapping in the wind, Ghost padding silently at her side. Weeks passed, winter deepened. In the halls of Winterfell, Sansa ruled with quiet grace, the memory of her brother ever near. Yet strange tales reached her from the far north, of lights dancing in the night sky, of wolves howling where none should be, of a lone figure walking the edge of the world, his eyes bright as frost. The Maesters dismissed such talk as folly. But one night, when the moon was full and the fire burned low, Sansa dreamed. In her dream, she stood upon the wall, not as it was now, broken and low, but whole and shining, carved of pure crystal. The wind carried no cold. Snow fell softly, but it melted before it touched her. And there, upon the wall's crown, stood Jon. He wore no cloak, no armor. His hair blew wild in the wind, his eyes pale as morning light. Around him, the air shimmered with warmth. A faint glow pulsed beneath his skin, as if his veins carried not blood, but flame. "You're alive," she whispered. He smiled, a rare, quiet smile, full of peace. "No, but I'm here." "What are you?" "What I was meant to be," he said. "The fire and the frost together. The balance the world forgot." She reached for him, but her hand met only light. "Will I see you again?" His voice softened. "Always, in the dawn." The wind rose, scattering snow like silver dust. When she woke, the sun was just breaking the horizon, painting the world in pale gold. For a long time, she lay still, listening to the silence of the castle, the distant cry of a wolf. Later that morning, she climbed the battlements. The sky was clear, the snow bright and clean, and far to the north, beyond the edge of sight, a faint shimmer moved across the clouds, silver and red, like wings. She watched until the light faded, then turned away, her heart strangely light. In the months that followed, the seasons began to turn. The ice upon the rivers cracked and melted. Green shoots pushed through the earth. The Maesters called it a blessing of the new age, a gentler spring. But the old men in the north whispered that the world had simply breathed again, healed for a time by the one who had bound its fire. Arya was last seen in the far reaches of the shivering sea, her ship sailing into mists no map had ever marked. Some said she chased her brother's spirit. Others said she sought the edge of the world, where the sun never sets. Sansa ruled for many years. She rebuilt the North stone by stone, raised the broken watchtowers, and taught her people to endure not only the cold, but the warmth that followed. And when she stood beneath the heart tree, she sometimes thought she felt a hand upon her shoulder, steady and strong. Far beyond the wall, where the snow never melts, there is said to be a valley of glass. On clear nights, light glimmers there beneath the ice, neither flame nor frost, but something between, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The wildlings call it the sleeping fire, and sometimes, when the wind blows just right, a wolf's howl echoes through the empty wastes, and the night itself seems to remember a man who was both the north and the flame that tried to burn it. Jon Snow, who lived and died, and lived again in the heartbeat of the world. The realm of men forgot him in time, as it forgets all things, but the wind still carries his name, soft as a prayer, across the snows that never end. And so the tale of fire and ice found its rest. Years passed, and the world changed in small, patient ways. The seasons began to soften. The snows retreated from the forests, and the rivers broke their ice. What had once been endless winter became a season of thaw. Men called it the quiet spring, and though they sang songs of peace, many still looked north at night, half expecting to see fire upon the horizon. Winterfell remained the heart of the north. From its halls ruled Queen Sansa Stark, wise and watchful, her hair now streaked with silver though her eyes still burned bright. Beneath her, the north prospered. Villages were rebuilt, ships sailed again from White Harbor, and the long roads through the Wolfswood saw trade and laughter return. But she never forgot the silence that had come after the storm. In the Godswood, the heart tree stood ancient and still, its red leaves whispering of memory. Sansa often went there alone, to speak softly into the cold air as though her words might find her brother beyond it. "The fire sleeps," she would say, "but I know it still dreams." One morning, as dawn spilled pale gold over the battlements, a horn sounded at the gates. The sentries shouted, and the sound of hooves echoed through the yard. A rider came from the east, cloak torn and crusted with salt. His horse stumbled from exhaustion, yet the man's eyes shone with something between terror and awe. He fell to his knees before the queen. "Your Grace," he gasped, "I bring word from Hardhome. The sea burns." The hall murmured. Sansa's face remained still. "Burns?" she said. The man nodded. "A light under the waves, not fire of ships nor lanterns. It moves beneath the water, alive, and the wildlings swear they've seen a shape rise from it, great as a mountain, with wings of glass." For a long moment, no one spoke. The hearth popped, the banners stirred in the draft. Then Sansa said quietly, "Send word to the Citadel. Tell them to read every record of Valyria and of the North, and double the watch on the coast." That night, she dreamed again. She stood upon a black shore. The sea glowed red, and the sky above it was filled with falling snow. From the waves rose a dragon of light, vast and beautiful, its wings dripping flame that did not burn. Upon its back sat a figure cloaked in shadow. When he lifted his head, she saw Jon's face, older, harder, but his eyes were calm, filled with an endless, aching peace. "You said it was over," she whispered. His voice was low and distant, like the echo of the wind. "It never ends, Sansa. The fire and the frost are the same song. One sleeps while the other wakes." She reached toward him, but the sea between them grew, swallowing the light. His voice followed her as she fell into the dark. "Tell them to remember, balance is the only peace." She woke before dawn, heart pounding, the dream burning clear as if it had been real. Outside, the wind howled around the castle walls. When she looked from her window, she thought she saw a faint shimmer upon the northern horizon, silver and crimson, like the aurora of old. By midday, riders returned from Deepwood Motte. They carried shards of black glass washed ashore, smooth and warm to the touch, shaped like dragon scales. Maester Colmar swore they pulsed faintly when held to the light. "The world stirs again," he told her. "Perhaps the flame beneath has turned in its sleep." Sansa dismissed him, but kept one shard for herself. That night she sat beside the hearth, holding it between her palms. It was no larger than a coin, yet when she gazed into it, she thought she saw movement, snow swirling around fire, a faint glimmer of wings. She closed her eyes and listened to the crackle of the fire. For an instant, she heard a heartbeat. Far to the west, across the sea, sailors spoke of strange winds that filled their sails, carrying them faster than any current. They said the water glowed faintly in the moonlight, and that the gulls that followed their ships bore feathers of silver white. Some whispered of a ship sailing beyond the known world, its prow carved in the shape of a wolf's head, its captain a woman who wore no crown but carried a blade that had tasted dragon fire. Arya Stark's ship, they said, the Wolf of the Dawn. She was seen once near the Shadowlands, once beyond Bravos, and once, by Madman's account, sailing where the stars touched the sea. Those who heard her name spoke it in wonder or in fear, and in every tale, the great white wolf ran before her upon the waves, howling toward the edge of the world. Years turned as quietly as the snow that falls on graves. Sansa grew older, her reign marked by calm and wisdom. The children of the North knew peace for the first time in 100 years. Yet the stories never ceased. A flicker of fire on the northern ice, a whisper that the man who had been Jon Snow still walked where no man should live. When at last Sansa's time came, they laid her beneath the heart tree beside her kin. That night, a storm rose from the sea. Lightning flashed over Winterfell, and for an instant, all the north was bathed in a light both red and white. The wind carried the scent of rain and smoke, and in the distance, a single wolf's howl answered the thunder. The old men who watched the skies swore they saw wings among the clouds. In the years that followed, the world slowly forgot. Maesters wrote of the long winter as a myth, of dragons as beasts of the past, of fire and ice as nothing more than the fancies of poets. But north of the wall, where no maester ever walked and no king's banner flew, the wildlings told a different tale. They spoke of a valley where the snow never melts, and beneath its ice burns a light like a sleeping sun. On cold nights, it beats like a heart. They say a man guards it, wrapped in furs of white and shadow, his hair black as night, his eyes pale as dawn. He carries a sword that gleams like the last light of sunset, and at his side walks a wolf as big as a horse. He asks no name of travelers and gives none in return. He only says, "The fire must sleep, else the world will burn again." And when they leave, the snow begins to fall once more, covering their tracks until there is no sign that any had ever passed. So the north endures, as it always has, cradled between flame and frost. The wall stands smaller but stronger, bound by the blood of kings and the tears of wolves. And sometimes, when the aurora dances across the sky, its colors red and white, silver and blue, the people of the north look up from their fires and whisper a name carried still upon the wind: Jon Snow. For though the world forgets, the wind remembers. It sighs through the ruins of ice and stone, over the long plains and empty hills, carrying with it the faint echo of wings and the promise of balance, the song of fire and ice, eternal, waiting to be sung again.